Good evening and welcome to this meeting in Winchester Town Forum. The time is 6:30. My name is Simon Hendy, Strategic Director for Winchester City Council. As this is the first meeting in the municipal year, I'm opening the meeting to take the first procedural item on the agenda, which is the appointment of the chairperson and vice chairperson for the 25-26 municipal year. Firstly, please may I ask the forum for nominations for the position of chairperson for 25-26.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Westwood.
Thank you, Councillor. And to have a second of that, please.
I second that. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bathurst. Can I have a show of hands in favour of Councillor Westwood as the chairperson for municipal year? Thank you very much. I can confirm that Councillor Westwood has been duly elected as chairperson in Winchester Town Forum for 25-26. Thank you. I now move on. Please could I ask the forum for nominations for the position of vice chair for 25-26, please. Councillor Owen.
Sorry. Councillor Eve.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Learning. Can I have a show of hands in favour of Councillor Eve as vice chairman for the year, please? Thank you very much. I confirm that Councillor Eve has been duly elected as a vice chairperson for 25-26. Thank you very much. I now hand over the meeting to the chairperson, Councillor Westwood, to open the meeting and proceed with the rest of the agenda.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hendy, and thank you for those that proposed, seconded and voted for me. I'm very grateful for that, and I'm looking forward to being your chair in this committee for the next 12 months. So please can I welcome everyone to this meeting of the Winchester Town Forum taking place in the Walton Suite, Winchester Guildhall. My name is Councillor Chris Westwood, a newly appointed chairperson for this meeting. The meeting is being live streamed and recorded to the Council's YouTube channel. Subtitles are available and advice on how to turn this on is set out on our website. Can everyone please ensure their mobile phones are on silent? In the unlikely event that it's necessary to evacuate the building, the fire alarm will sound. Please follow all instructions given to you by our team. And can I welcome members of the public and visiting councillors to this meeting? I'll invite you forward when it's time for you to make your contribution. So turning to the agenda, first of all, apologies for absence. And we have apologies from.
Thank you, Chair. So apologies for absence received from Councillor Murphy and for lateness from Councillor Todd and Thompson. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 3 in the agenda, disclosures of interest. Are there any disclosures of interest? And I can see none. Thank you. Item 4, chairperson's announcements. As I've been chair for probably 45 seconds, there are no chairperson's announcements tonight, but we'll change that in future meetings, I'm sure. Item 5, minutes of the previous meeting held on the 23rd of January 2025. Can I ask the committee, are these agreed? Thank you. Item 6 is to note the dates and times of future meetings of the forum, which is set out in the agenda. Are these agreed? Thank you. And item 7, public participation. So I have 5 members of the public registered to speak this evening. Mr. Tate, Mr. Spalding, Kate Needham and Stephanie Danby. And those 4 members of the public will speak during public participation, and I will call you forward in that order. in a moment. I also have requests from Patrick Davis to speak on item 8. And Patrick, I'll call you forwards when we move to item 8. And I also have 2 visiting councillors wishing to speak tonight, of whom I can see one. And they are Councillor Horrell and Councillor Godfrey. And I'll call you forwards to speak when we get to item 8. That's okay. Right, thank you. So, Mr. Tate, would you like to come and join us? And I think you know the form. You'll have 3 minutes to address the committee, and there'll be a timer on the screen behind me, and start whenever you choose. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, for the opportunity to address the town forum. Every time I run at the Winchester Park Run, I'm reminded that back on the 9th of March 2022, Cabinet considered a land transaction regarding River Park Leisure Centre and Southampton University. I spoke at that meeting in support of the proposals and welcomed the link to the university. It was minuted. The leader welcomed Mr. Tate's support, but explained that it was not appropriate to delay the decision, emphasising that future extensive consultation would be undertaken by the university. Now, over 3 years later, where are we? There is a statement from the leader dated the 20th of March this year, confirming that the university are not going ahead and considering their options. I now have to ask myself, where was the due diligence? Where was the dialogue with the university? My feedback from some good insiders at the university is that they lost patience with Winchester, who just couldn't make up their mind with what they wanted. Consultation can achieve so much. Talk is cheap, but often it actually delivers nothing at all. The old Leisure Centre is literally rotting in front of our eyes. As I say, I'm in the park every Saturday along with Councillor Batho at our park run, which is a brilliant facility, so the area does work, but I feel utterly ashamed of the disgraceful state that building is in. I went to the notice board because I thought, yeah, it's in the public domain, people see it every day, had a good look at it, noticed that there was information on there, but it's 4 years out of date. When I spoke back in whenever it was 2022, I harked back to the absolutely brilliant, the 10 days at the Laundry Art Project, which I think anyone who remembers it will say it was an undoubted success, and it drew people across Winchester to that part of Winchester. We've already got the colour factory there, which is again another excellent facility that we've got. So I'd have to say it's unfortunate the leader isn't yet with us. It's been utterly shambolic, and the statement on the website says nothing. And I've tried over the last few days to see whether I could find out with a bit of an understanding of finding information from the council, and I got nowhere. And I remember the jolly good solicitor at that meeting back in 22 who assured us that they had looked in detail at the covenant on the land. What's then happened? Why are we 3 years down the road from that discussion with absolutely nothing done to the area? Something must be done, and I hope, so it's unfortunate the leader's not here, but I hope the town forum can stimulate the leader into getting something done soon rather than later. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Tate. Councillor Becker, would you like to respond to a couple of those points?
Yes, very happy to, Chair. Oh, let's move that forward. I can't comment on the discussions with the university because I wasn't on Cabinet at the time, but it is actually very timely that you're here tonight, because tomorrow we are issuing a press release inviting people to come along to a public engagement session on the 26th of June from 3 to 7 p.m. in the courtyard here at the Guildhall, and that will be to listen to the public about, we've got a planned process for the future of the site, and we want to hear how they feel about that planned process and to provide ideas for the future use of the site. So that will be very widely advertised using all normal channels and additional channels we plan on putting It's not on the website yet. We are still finalising, but it will be released tomorrow.
Thank you, Councillor Becker. Can I welcome Mr. Spalding to the meeting? Mr. Spalding, would like to come forward. I believe you have a prop as well. And again, you have 3 minutes and start whenever you come.
Good evening. Yes, I'm Richard Spalding. I'm here to seek your approval to install a peace pole in the Sir Optimist garden at the back of Abbey House. I'm here on behalf of Winchester Rotary, having been president 4 years ago, and I'm also an area governor for Rotary, supervising 8 clubs in Mid and North Hampshire. One of Rotary's 7 areas of focus is peace and conflict resolution. I'm also a retired Royal Navy captain. I joined in 1976, served through the Falklands and 2 Gulf Wars, and I've even been to Afghanistan. All these campaigns were striving for long-term peace. However, world peace seems to be a bit of a premium these days. I've also visited Hiroshima and Nagasaki. There are many thousands of peace poles around the world, the initiative having been started in Japan in 1955. However, there are very few in UK. The peace pole has standard wording on it, "May peace prevail on earth," and this is written in 7 languages, English on one side, and then 2 main languages on each of the other 3 sides, Japanese, Chinese, French, Spanish, and German and Russian. It was hoped that Winchester could be the first city in the south to erect one of these. However, Jersey has recently installed one, and I know that other cities are considering it. The reason we believe that Abbey Gardens is the best place for it is that Winchester is trying to promote peace, is a city of mayors for peace, has the longest serving mayoralship outside London, is a city of sanctuary, and Abbey Gardens is the mayor's garden. The Sir Optimists have also agreed for it to be installed in their garden at the back of the house, which will be a good balance of being appropriately serene and discreet, but nevertheless give a much more visible and tangible focus to Winchester's goal to support peace. Other benefits of the peace pole would obviously be to help spread the whole culture of peace, especially to children. They and schools can visit and start conversation about peace and even do projects about peace, as indeed some others have done around the world. International visitors can also enjoy it, as the wording is in 7 languages, and it would clearly promote Winchester. All past mayors I've spoken with believe Winchester should be leading the way with this, setting the example to other cities and towns to do likewise, and that an exemption should be made for it to be installed in Abbey Gardens. A really appropriate target for this will be the next Mayors for Peace commemoration in early August. The world could definitely do with some hope and peace at the moment, and what better simple way to make a mark by Winchester. I'm passionate about peace. I hope you're all passionate about peace. We all certainly should be. How can Winchester not do this? I have a photograph, 2 photographs of what it might look like in the Sir Optimist garden, which I'll pass round. It's not there currently, it's here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Spalding. And can I thank you for coming along today and bringing this to this committee as well. I know you have the support of the mayors, both past and present mayors, and I know you've also discussed this with officers and with councillors. And I think we're at a point where we need to come to a decision. Now, the town forum has an informal group, a subcommittee that looks after and makes recommendations about open space within the town area. And so what I would like to do is to ask the town forum open space subcommittee to discuss this and come back with a proposal as they see fit. And I can assure you we will take this very seriously. And also around this table, you have the John Tippett Cooper, so Councillor Tippett Cooper, who is our City of Sanctuary champion. You have Councillor Becker sitting here, who's on Cabinet and responsible for community, diversity, inclusion, and so on. And there's a lot of support in the message that you're trying to push forwards here, and physically display of that message within our city. So That's what I'd like to ask the subcommittee, which is led by Councillor Eve to my left, to take this on as a piece of work and come back with a proposal.
Very happy to look into that. Yeah, work towards that for the next meeting, hopefully. Thank you.
And thank you again for coming along. Thank you for bringing the poll so we can see it. Thank you. Next to speak, Kate Needham. Kate, if you'd like to, same process, start, push the button, get the microphone on and start whenever you're ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Forum, for the opportunity. My name is Kate Needham. I'm co-chair of Winchester District Green Party, and I'm speaking here as a local resident. I'd like to raise the issue of urban tree and hedgerow management. Recently, a hedgerow on the footpath between Priorsdean Road and Andover Road was severely chopped. Local people are extremely upset and shocked. It was hacked down during peak bird nesting season. Ornithologists have said it's highly likely there would have been birds nesting in that hedgerow. Urban hedgerows are extremely important. They support a multitude of wildlife. They help to mitigate climate change, clean the air and prevent localised flooding. I'm here to try and stop it happening again to other urban trees and hedges in the city. The council responded to the public outcry by trying to justify the work. According to Councillor Tippett Cooper, overhanging branches had been reported by members of the public, and he suggested the work may have been necessary for safety reasons. If that was the case, then why weren't the offending branches simply identified and removed? Why was the hedge not just cut back a little? It's not clear, and speculation is rife. It's such a wide path. If such a wide path is deemed urgent, then nowhere is safe. Apparently, a bird survey was done by the contractor, but surely that is them marking their own homework, and only ID Verdi know what went into their shredder. There was no light touch here. It's all very sad. Pardon the pun, but I'm not going to beat about the bush. People are simply not buying it because it doesn't add up. Locals know that path. They know it's wide, and nesting birds have been seen going in and out of that hedgerow. So trying to justify the work isn't the answer. I don't believe this hedge should have been cut down like this. I'd also like to believe that if a robust procedure had been followed involving the council's natural environment team, then this habitat would have been protected. People contacted the council for answers, but no one seemed to know how it happened. It beggars belief that the council's own natural environment department didn't even know about it. I wrote to ID Verdi 12 days ago and have had no reply, so I have some questions. What is the procedure that led to the hedge being cut, and what is the evidence it posed an urgent health and safety risk and had to be cut so drastically? Not just the height, not just the width, but the height. 2. Why was the stretch of hedgerow that runs alongside the back garden of the neighbouring house singled out and not the rest? 3. The council has declared a nature emergency and stated that decisions to cut hedges and trees are carefully considered and not taken lightly. So, why was the council's own natural environment department not involved in the decision to cut down this hedgerow? If the town forum is serious about protecting natural habitats, then will you please back action to ensure that in future the natural environment department will be an integral part of a robust, transparent, evidence-based decision-making process for hedge and tree management. It clearly cannot be left up to the contractors alone to protect these important urban habitats. Maybe a performance review is needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Councillor Lurney, could you pick up some of those points, please?
Thank you. The City Council does take its role in looking after hedges and trees very seriously. We very rarely carry out works on trees and hedges during the bird nesting season. However, it is sometimes necessary. We are looking into the particular reasons as to why this work was deemed necessary at this time, but it's important to recognise that this is a very well used and important path which takes pedestrians and cyclists to Henry Beaufort Secondary School, Kings Barton and Harestock Primary Schools, meaning the work did need to be done during school holidays as it's a detour of over half a mile to take an alternative route. Our contractors did carry out the necessary bird checks in the weeks prior to the works commencing, as well as on the mornings of the works, and I have seen those work logs. So that evidence does exist. That confirmed there were no bird activity into the areas which have been cut back. Our team of professional ecologists have checked the work logs themselves and are happy that the correct checks were made. I understand that Mrs. Needham lives in the centre of town and may not be familiar with this path. And I would like to reassure her that social media does not give a full picture of the works carried out. This is a route which I use all the time, and indeed I walked through it this afternoon to get here for this evening. The length of hedge severely cut back is a very short part of the hedge between Hall's Farm Close and the Andover Road, and it will regenerate. I have actually already had a complaint about why the longer length of path between Hall's Farm Close and Prize-Dean Road was left untouched. So it does show that you can't please everybody. I think it's important to recognise that hedges do need maintaining to prevent them becoming trees and keeping them as hedgerows. I think anybody who's seen a hedge laid will know how awful it looks afterwards. However, it does fairly rapidly regenerate, and it's often drastic works that are needed to keep hedges in good health in the long term. I think, however, despite having said all that, we do feel that the work was justified and that the correct checks were made. I think we do have to look at maybe more formal procedures in terms of giving permission for this work to go ahead at this time of year. So we will be taking that away and looking at that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ernie. And just to add my piece to that, so we're looking at the procedures, processes. Does that include engaging with the natural environment team as well when we make these decisions?
Potentially, but we do have to recognise that they already have a very full workload in terms of looking at the bigger planning environment, and I wouldn't want them to have to look at every piece of work that ID Verdi do before giving permission to go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, but somebody needs to monitor the ID Verdi.
Okay, next, I'm delighted to welcome Stephanie Danby to the committee and speak to the committee today. If you'd like to come and join us, and I did send it around electronically today to all of the members sitting around here, and so you are chair of Chesil Theatre, and you're here to talk to us about the development work at Chesil Theatre. So,
yeah, that's right.
Thank you.
I'm Stephanie, yes, chairman of the Chesil Theatre in Chesil Street, and this is my colleague and co-trustee Jo, who some of you may recognise. We're just here to update you on the latest from our theatre. We're an entirely voluntary community theatre run as a charity. Turning over to page 2 of my presentation, we do an awful lot for the community. I'm just going to quickly run through it. We produce up to 8 productions per year of a very high quality. And if people can't come to us, then we take drama out to the community. So we do Chesil Outreach Out, where we go to community groups in churches and so on. And we also do community outreach in, where we bring, for example, Hampshire County Council Children in Care into the theatre to spend a day with us learning about what we do. We have a vibrant youth theatre, and our Chesil Take 10 creative writing competition, although national, is it involves huge numbers of people across the Winchester district. On the next page, what we would like to do is do more of what we do really well. So we were really pleased to get planning consent in November 24 for our extension. We now own the freehold of the church, which we currently live in, as well as having bought the freehold of the land next door, which currently has a derelict house on it. What we plan to do is improve our audience amenities. We're adding a performance studio / community room for community use. And we're going to make a proper entrance, because at the moment we don't have one. We've just come straight in off the street. Turning over again, you can see a picture of some of the facilities which show the real need for what we're doing, and there is a huge need. So We have at the moment no accessible facilities, particularly for disabled people in wheelchairs. And the other legal challenge that we face is that we don't have separate dressing rooms for children in performance, which is a legal requirement: men, women, boys, girls. So we also have some substandard stuff that we would like to work towards, for example, a proper entrance, a better bar, and increase our community use. How are we going to pay for all of this? Well, we're told by the surveyors that the project will cost £2.1 million. We've raised already over £1 million so far, and thank you to Winchester City Council for the past grant of £90,000. We still need to raise 1.1 million, and we launched in March a massive fundraising capital campaign, and I'm really pleased that we've already raised £200,000 in 3 months. The really important thing for everyone to understand is that our theatre does not, once built, will not require any revenue grant in order to sustainably operate. We make a surplus year on year, and we're very well financially managed. So just to say, the huge numbers of people who from the Winchester area who will benefit, it includes children from all backgrounds. We welcome refugees. We've run a Sudanese, an apprenticeship in carpentry for a Sudanese refugee recently. We have homeless people on our teams, and lots of other people. I just want to say thank you really for your continued support as we move into this expansion, because we just want to do more of what we do really well for our community. We're busting at the seams, and we're going to achieve this. So thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for bringing this to the town forum today. And we all know the value of the Chesil Theatre. I think lots of us use the Chesil Theatre to the city. I think what is less known, and we were discussing this the other day when we met, is the value that is delivered into the communities around you as well, and the potential for greater value in those communities as well. So we do have time for a couple of questions, and so Councillor Reach, I believe you have a question.
Thank you, Chair. It wasn't a question, it was just to say thank you. I was lucky enough to have Stephanie do a guided tour along with Councillor Aaron around the theatre, and have attended performances there myself, and representing the ward of St Michael where the theatre is. It's a fantastic facility, and the thing that always strikes me is actually that it's quite a diverse programme that theatre puts on. It's very, I was going to say worthy, that sounds very charged term, but it's a very fun and diverse and interesting programme, and a bit different from what else is on in the city. So I just urge anyone that we really should try and support this if we can.
Thank you.
Councillor Eve.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes, thank you for coming this evening. Very interesting to hear about the plans. Very much enjoyed the recent production of Lemons as well.
Oh, brilliant.
It was good to hear about the community aspect. I wondered if you could expand a bit on that. Is that mainly going to be performance space, or I know you mentioned the apprenticeship. Would that potentially be for other community uses, for obviously Highcliffe and the wider city?
Yes, exactly that. So as you do, I'm now very well up on the vision for Winchester and the 15-minute idea, and so we've instigated some new programmes. So we're running an art competition at the moment jointly with Winnell School and All Saints School, because although we're a city centre theatre, I think we're also very much a community theatre for those 15-minute areas. So we've formed partnerships also with Emmaus. We've had a lighting operator come and join us to do that. And yeah, I think it's really important to realise that we're part of that local community and not just the city centre, although, you know, we serve hundreds, thousands of people from all over the Winchester district. Outreach wise, we're really lucky that one of our members is a social worker with Hampshire County Council, so we have really good links, and she can just see the partnerships that are really obvious. So, you know, on a regular basis we get looked after children coming in, and some of our team are foster carers and able to, you know, give the children. I think what we really pride ourselves on is not offering what I call a jazz hands experience. It's not just about performance and being lovies. It's about improving children's confidence and making them feel better. I don't know if you want to say, Jo runs our youth theatre, so I probably ought to let her say something about it.
Yeah, I've been involved. I feel really passionately about children and theatre. It's not just the performance side of it, it's the confidence. I've seen children gain huge amounts of confidence and experience and friendships as well. So we have quite a lot of children who don't know each other from school, who all come together. They don't leave. That's another problem that we have, because they love it so much. They literally go through from joining at 7 and 8 years old, and we kick them out at 18 because that's our upper threshold. So and we've got a massive waiting list because of that. We are so popular. So yeah, this space, the other thing about this space is it would give us another performance space. So we have to let the adult shows take priority a lot of the time, but the kids love to perform. They feel really safe and cherished within the environment, and so it would enable us to do lots more performances for them, specifically just for them. So yeah, it's great opportunity.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can I thank you again for coming along and bringing this today? I mean, the theatre is a great asset to this city. You've clearly articulated some of the areas that people might not be so well aware of how you help the local community as well. I certainly, you get the support of this committee to help you in whichever way we can to raise your funds and get the new development built out. And yeah, I say that for the committee, but I suspect I say that personally for most of the people sitting around this table as well.
Thank you, Chris.
And I know you're getting the support of your local ward team, and you know, the ward team, if there's anything that the town forum can do, then come back to the town forum. Thank you.
Anyone would like a guided tour, then just get in touch. Come and have a look. Thank you so much.
Okay, moving on the agenda, item 8 is the response to the request of Winchester Town Forum for a community governance review. So I have Mr Davis who would like to speak on this item, and I also have 2 visiting councillors. Councillor Horrell, is Councillor Godfrey planning to come, or? Okay, but not here yet. Okay, so I've got 2 slots of visiting councillors there. So I'll start, Mr Davis, if you'd like to join us at the table. And I think you also know the format as well, microphones and 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I've read all the papers for today's meeting and the presentation slides and the paper that's going to next week's Licensing and Regulation Committee. These all have me thinking about a long ago radio children's hour programme from my long distant childhood, Toy Town, with its pompous characters, Mr Mayor and Mr Grouser. That was glorious free fiction. I'm afraid the proposals in front of you today are, in my view, expensive and confusing and at the wrong time. The costs on pages 26 and 28 of the slides, potentially devastating for people living in the Winchester town area. At present, the Winchester town charge for a Band D property is £90. £90 and 8p. The slide reveals that for a new city council, only a glorified parish council, with a wide range of assets and services, the charge could be £400. A new level of bureaucracy involving paid staff and offices for the new setup would bring, in my view, total confusion when the purpose of local government reform is meant to clarify and streamline local government services with one unitary authority in place of the present county and district councils. The timing of this exercise is absurd. Your meeting in January started the current exercise, but 5 months on, there's been total silence. The report claims that the full council has decided to accept the forum's request. But there's no evidence of that. It's never been to full council as far as I can tell. First, we need clarity on how local government services in a new unitary authority covering Winchester will be settled. Again, this is shrouded in mystery. The forward plan going to next week's cabinet tells us the council's first and final submission goes to their meeting on the 25th September. Nothing till then, apart from a brief oral update from the leader at the last cabinet meeting. I think it is totally premature to proceed in the way suggested in this report until we know the shape and size of the new unitary council, of which Winchester will undoubtedly form a significant and important part. That should be the council's real priority. To proceed in the way you're being recommended today, I think will cause hopeless confusion amongst the public sitting in this part of the district. It will also be, as I've said, fearfully expensive, because the idea of a new town council, city council, which is only a parish, with new offices, new staff, paid staff, with buildings in Winchester, it is a non-starter, and you ought to realise that.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Councillor Horrell, would you like to address the committee?
Chair, I've just had a message from Councillor Godfrey to say he's has a family issue and won't be able to join this evening, so he apologises for that. Chair, thank you for allowing me to address the Town Forum this evening. And I was interested to hear your resolution earlier this evening, agreeing your minutes from your last meeting. And at that meeting, you resolved in your minutes that the Town Forum agreed to make a request to Winchester City Council to consider undertaking a community governance review with a view to establishing a town council covering the unparished area of Winchester. A really quite straightforward request. I'm therefore asking why the presentation this evening that is before you suggests a governance review that is beyond the scope of the Town Forum request from earlier this year. The Licensing Committee has this topic on its agenda already for Monday, and in 11.2 on that meeting agenda in the papers, it talks about the devolution and local government reform process that's going on, and it indicates the scenario would create a divergence in local governance with the Winchester district, as the remaining areas outside the town walls already operate under parish or town council arrangements, and such inconsistency could lead to disparities in how services are delivered, the level of community representation, and the overall sense of local identity between the parished and unparished parts of the district. So we get the message. Those who are not parished, you'd like to become parished initially, and obviously on to a town council as indicated in your document. However, at this point, it is absolutely not clear to me what is in this for the extended geography that the town council wishes to bring new residents into. What are the objectives and the outcomes for the parished areas that you're looking to include? I'm struggling this evening to see in any of the documentation before you what is in it for the residents. As already indicated by one of the earlier speakers, in other authorities where this process has actually happened, residents have seen their precept increased 4 times. In one like city elsewhere in the country, Bandy residents went from 112 to £411 on their precept in just 2 years. There's no mention in any of that, in those impacts to residents in the document this evening. And I don't see how you can make a decision to go forward on the other parishes around the city when you haven't articulated what is in it for them. My question, therefore, Chair, to you and this committee is this just a land grab for a larger town area, currently Town Forum, to be a city council? Is it politically motivated in a concern that in a larger unitary you need a heart to ensure that this city has its voice still heard? Or is it actually a genuine concern for the residents of this district? Because if it is, these papers need to be enhanced significantly. And I hope that the officer team will ensure it's an absolutely level playing field as this process continues, because clearly this evening, with your majority, you will support the progress of this. But it does not feel to me at this moment that those who are being asked around the edges of Winchester to come forward, that you're giving them anything of meaning to assess that offer. And indeed, do they actually want to even consider it? And I know in one of my own parish councils just this week, there was a complete lack of understanding as to what this would mean on top of devolution and local government reform and all those changes that will come for those authorities. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Horan. Councillor Becker, can I ask you if you can pick up the questions from Mr. Davis and also answer Councillor Horrell's question? Is this just a land grab for a larger town area? Thank you.
Thank you. I'd be delighted. In respect to Mr. Davis, the timing has been foisted on us by the government. You may recall that this town forum took a decision in 2019. We looked at the governance options available to us and we took the decision that a town forum remained the right vehicle for our community. That's been changed by local government review. That is not something that we decided. That has been foisted on us. So the timing is not something that we have chosen. It is something that has happened to us, and we need to act in the best interest of our residents with the speed that we have to act with. As for the costs, I think you have misrepresented what the paper says. It actually says that the costs vary greatly in respect of the precept. It does not simply say that any precept will be £400 or more. It says that there is a range of precepts, as there is a range of precepts within our district currently. Currently, the town does have a low precept, but that is offset by higher precepts in other areas, and there is absolutely no guarantee at this point what a precept will be. That will be a decision for any new town council, nor has any decision been taken that there will be a new town council. This is the beginning of a process. It is called a community governance review because we are listening to the community. It is not a land grab. It is not political. It is no, Caroline, do not shake your head at me. That is rude. This is a procedure to talk to the communities around the historic boundaries of the town, to talk to them, to listen, to hear if they want to join a new town council or whether they whether they prefer to stay within their current parish area. For certain areas, such as Kings Barton, they have been asking for this review for a long time because they do not feel part of Headbourne-worthy. Lots of those residents feel that they are residents of the town, yet they do not have representation here at the town. So this is something that they have been asking for, and it is a once in a lifetime opportunity to carry that review out. This process puts community at its heart. We are talking about a process where we go out and we engage on draft terms of reference. We then engage again on the final terms of reference. The public have the opportunity to come along to this meeting today. They have the opportunity to come along to licensing on Monday. They will have the opportunity to engage in lots and lots of sessions. We're having a parish briefing shortly where they will be invited to share their views. This is not a land grab, and it is insulting that you say that it is. This is an opportunity for residents to say how they want to be governed in this new world.
Thank you, Councillor Becker. And if I can just add to that, that my interpretation of the document that we're going to run through in a second with Mr. John, and the request for the CGR and the work that will be done under the premise of the Licensing Regulation Committee is a consultative process. Absolutely is a consultative process, and people may not agree with that, but we will demonstrate it as a consultative process as we move through it, and you will see that happen. So thank you for your participation today, Mr. Davies, Councillor Horrell. I'd like to move on to Mr. John. If you could introduce the paper and take us through the presentation, I'd be grateful. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this agenda item, as you heard, relates to a request made by the Winchester Town Forum at its meeting on the 23rd of January to consider a community governance review with a view to establishing a town council for central Winchester. A community governance review can be undertaken by a council at any time. The review will explore the potential options for establishing a town council, and the report sets out the framework to oversee and steer the process. The council's constitution provides that all duties and functions relating to CGRs under the Local Government Public Health Act 2007 are the responsibility of the Licensing and Regulation Committee, except the making of the final order, which gives effect to any recommendations that arise from the review. And this will be subject to a full council decision. This matter will be considered, as you've heard, at the Licensing and Regulatory Committee at their meeting next Monday, 16th of June, where they'll be asked to acknowledge the potential for a community governance review and then establish a cross-party member working group whose work will include overseeing formulation of the terms of reference and then later on considering responses to consultations and drafting final recommendations. I would stress at this stage this is a very early step in the process, and an additional Licensing and Regulatory Committee meeting will be scheduled to consider terms of reference for public consultation. This is likely to be held in September, October this year, and it's this decision that will formally commence the CGR process. I've got a presentation now which I'd like to briefly take you through, noting of course these have already been circulated. Okay, so what is a community governance review? A community governance review is a legal or statutory process which enables a council to review all or part of its area to make changes to governance arrangements for existing town and parish councils and also create new parishes. A community governance review can be used for creating, merging, altering or abolishing parishes. It can be used for the naming of parishes and the style of new parishes, including the potential creation of town and parish councils. Electoral arrangements for parishes, for example, council size, number of councillors, and for larger parish councils, warding arrangements to sit within that. And finally, grouping parishes. Community governance review cannot be used for changing the number of district or county councillors, changing district or county council ward boundaries, change the amount of money that a parish or town council raises through council tax, or change individual parish councillors. And I'd stress again at this stage that this is an entirely different process to the wider local government reorganisation process that's going on around us currently. So CGR in Winchester. So as I'm sure some of you will be aware, this has been undertaken previously in this district. North Whiteley in 2023, west of Waterlooville and Littleton and Harestock in 2018, some of which resulted in the creation of new parish councils, some of which didn't because the views of the residents at the time didn't support that. They're most commonly used to establish new parish or town councils in areas that were previously unparished or where there's been substantial population growth or new development. The idea has been previously proposed for the urban area of Winchester, but I understand at that time the Winchester Town Forum was considered the most appropriate vehicle for representation of the views of residents of the unparished town area. So what services can be provided by a town parish council? So fairly wide-ranging powers. Allotments are actually the only statutory service that automatically transfers to a parish council on creation. Open spaces and public realm, public toilets, community centres and play areas, street cleaning and lighting, cemeteries, bus shelters, community transport, crime reduction, community safety measures and community events and celebrations. the typical events, so the typical services that sit with parish councils. The kind of things that don't tend to sit with parish councils, regulatory functions, never, for example, planning, licensing, environmental health, these would be transferred on the abolition of Winchester City Council to the unitary that replaced it. On and off street car parking, very rarely held by parish councils. They can be in certain circumstances with the consent of the county council or unitary authority as highways authority for the area. And finally, widespread commercial or the wider strategic projects that affect the area. So town council can provide an influencing role. It can provide a focus for local issues and the area's identity, champion residents and local businesses and represent Winchester's interests. But this is particularly important going forward where we have a wider mid-Hampshire unitary authority. Acts as a statutory consultee for the planning process and give its collective views on planning applications. It can make external funding bids, promote cultural events. And again, I'd stress, as I have done earlier, it's not a replacement for current Winchester City Council or a successor unitary authority, but works alongside other authorities and utilises its resources to improve the area and quality of life for its residents. Why now? That's already been covered to some extent, but a request has been received from the Winchester Town Forum to consider. Winchester City Council area currently has 44 parish councils and 4 parish meetings, but the built up areas of Winchester are unrepresented entirely at parish town council level. Local government reorganisation will result in the formation of a larger, potentially more remote unitary authority, where democratic representation potentially could reduce from a population of 1 to 2,500 councillor ratio to around 1 to 5,000. Parish and town councils can be an effective way of safeguarding and promoting local services. So how will this be undertaken? Pre-commencement engagement with potentially affected ward members, existing parishes to inform terms of reference. The establishment of a project team consisting of officers from legal, democratic, electoral services, communications, finance, community engagement, policy and GIS. Some work has already commenced in this area in terms of identifying individuals to join this group. The identification of assets, service contracts affecting the area under review. Preparing draft terms of reference for consideration and approval by the Licensing and Regulatory Committee. Now, as I've said on this, there is a Licensing and Regulatory Committee meeting on Monday, which will basically acknowledge the potential for a review, and will also set up a working group which will work on these recommendations. So this will establish the working group. Initial resident consultation will then take place on the draft terms of reference. This will not be taking place until after the Licensing and Regulatory Committee meeting in September. The work group will consider submissions received and prepare draft recommendations. It will consult on the draft recommendations and final recommendations will be prepared. Finally, it will consider submissions received and prepare final recommendations, which include a schedule of assets to be transferred. In more complex cases, which this has all the hallmarks of becoming given the size and scope of it, potentially a second and third round of consultation may be required to refine recommendations and to explore, I suppose, themes that emerge during the first round of consultation. Final recommendations considered by full council meeting. This is not likely to be until late 2026, because basically this kicks off a 12-month process. So the process commences with the Licensing and Regulation Committee in September, October. The process then has to be undertaken within 12 months, and then there will be the full council meeting following that. So it'll be the late part of 2026. Following that, it proceeds to a reorganisation order. The reorganisation order is made by full council. Precept charge is determined by the council for the new parish/town council for its first year of operation. On the 1st of April, the new parish/town council is established. And in May, the first parish/town council elections take place, and then the new council becomes operational and assets and services are transferred. at that date and in the months after that. So what's included in the terms of reference? This sets out the context, purpose and scope of the community governance review. It identifies the areas under review. It contains a review timetable, a plan for consultation and decision making. It presents structure of parishes and governance arrangements and boundaries, parish names, styles, councillor numbers and wards, consultation and engagement. Right, who must be consulted? Local residents within the area under review, county council, the duty to inform once the review is underway, all affected existing parish and town councils, local businesses and residents associations, other stakeholders such as local schools, health bodies, local voluntary organisations, and the Local Government Boundary Commission for England. So there is no minimum period for consultation, but it'll typically be for 6 to 12 weeks per occasion, which is what LGA guidance suggests. There'll be press releases, local media and social media information, council and parish newsletters, notice boards, writing to stakeholder groups, public events will be held, and WCC emailed resident newsletter. So the engagement process itself will follow the gunning principles, which are the standard public sector principles on consultation, which state that consultation has to be undertaken when proposals are at an early stage and capable of being influenced by responses. There must be sufficient information to allow intelligent consideration. There must be adequate time for consultees to consider and respond. Conscientious consideration must be given to the consultation responses prior to making a decision. So the council is required to ensure that community governance within the area under the review reflects the identities and interests of the community in that area, is effective and convenient, and in doing so has to take into account the impact of community governance arrangements on community cohesion and the size, population and boundaries of a local community or parish. So the areas under review, as I've already said, this hasn't been set at this stage. That's the function of the working group in the first instance, to bring some options forward, but it will include the 5 WCC wards, which are unparished. And it may also extend out to cover the other urban areas of the city, which directly border the city area. I've put some of these on here. So potentially the Kings Barton area of Headbourne Worthy Parish Council's area. Other areas that built up adjoin WCC wards and identify strongly with Winchester as a place, and any existing anomalies that are identified during the mapping process that can be easily resolved during this process. Finances and funding. So parish and town councils are funded, as we've heard already, by a precept, which is an additional charge on the council tax bill. These vary greatly depending on the services which are provided or transferred to that authority. And as you've heard, these range from around £50 per annum based on Band D for a very small parish with very few assets, to up to £400 per annum for a large city council with a wide range of assets and services. Right. So assets and transfers, these should be service led, with the asset reasonably required to deliver a particular service transferred. They must be rational, follow procedural requirements and be for a proper purpose, and can be undertaken after the creation of new councils on request. So it doesn't all have to be dealt with now. So finances and precept, it's funded by the additional charge. As we've heard, the current Winchester Town Forum precept is £90 per annum for Band D. It's calculated based on previous year's cost plus a forecast uplift. The initial precept for any newly created town council would be collected by WCC to fund the first year of services in the same way as the current Winchester Town Forum payment. So Winchester has some fairly unique characteristics in terms of its city and city status and mayoralty, which are 900 plus years old, and as such requires some special treatment. It's imperative that this ancient city status is preserved, and the local government reorganisation process, which we are going into at the moment, can pose a potential risk to this. And As was well known at the time, Rochester managed to lose its city status in 1998 as a result of local government reorganisation in Kent, and has battled unsuccessfully since to restore this. So clearly it's in the city's best interest to retain the city status, mayoralty and coat of arms, and transfer these to a new town council rather than a unitary authority which would cover a far wider area. The process for dealing with this is rather arcane and devilishly complicated, and it involves potentially 3 petitions to the King and the assistance of the York Herald at the College of Arms. So this cannot be undertaken until a new town council is created, and the process will be commenced in April 2027 when if a new town council is established, to allow time for this to take place prior to completion of local government reorganisation. The new town council will be established as a parish council, but could style itself as a town council by decision at its first meeting. And if the city status is transferred by royal charter, it can resolve to style itself as a city council. Now, as I've said, this is an incredibly complex area, and further advice is still being sought by the legal team on the novel civic and heraldic issues. Finally, so next steps, and this is the immediate next step. So early engagement, timetable for implementation, work commencing on the assets and contracts, scoping, a project team, draft terms of reference, licensing and regulatory committee consideration, and a member task and finish group. And the action plan from here, which is we're right at the beginning of this now, so establishing an officer and project group in June 2025, briefing for Winchester Town Forum where we are, licensing and regulatory committee next week, briefing for briefing for all parishes actually within the Winchester district, which is taking place at Parish Liaison on the 24th of June. And September 25, consideration of draft terms of reference by the licensing and regulatory committee, and anticipated to be September to November, the first round of public consultation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. John. So at that point, can I ask if there are any questions from the committee? The forum. I see no questions, but I have a question, so I will start. We have initiated this process by requesting a community governance review. That governance review under our constitution is undertaken by licensing and regulation, if that's correct. My question to you is that how does this town forum remain engaged in that process and doesn't just have an outcome given to it? How does that actually work?
Okay, so obviously it will appoint to the member working group, which will be established by the licensing committee, and obviously it's within the gift of the town forum to set up its own informal group as well to discuss issues that are pertinent to it. Was that?
That's fine. I mean, I'm keen that this forum is kept up to speed and abreast of not just the outcome when it arrives, but during the process as well. And it's important that we understand what is going on, how it is being done, how it is progressing, because it's important for us and the responsibility that we have, because ultimately we want to see the outcome that our residents are properly represented come local government review. That is the primary purpose, has been pointed out by many people many times here. So I'm keen to see exactly how that will be done.
I mean, this could be sorry, Chair. This could be a standing order item on the agenda going forward. But we'd be happy to come to each of these and provide an update.
Okay, thank you. I think that's something we need to discuss exactly how that will happen. So we have that process in place. Councillor Batho.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask a question with regard to the bid. because obviously that's a very sort of important part of the marketing and support to businesses within the city area. However, it's, I believe, funded through business rates, and business rates, I doubt, would then be part of the town council. So how would we see the relationship, or does anybody thought about the relationship that might evolve with the bid under this process?
I'm not sure that process would necessarily be affected by the creation of a town council, because it's not funded via the precept in any event. As you actually say, it's business rates. So I mean, there will be transitional arrangements as we emerge from sort of local government reorganisation, but I wouldn't envisage any changes to that. Certainly there are no changes to that or implications as a result of this process.
I just would add that the bid will, of course, have the opportunity to participate in the community governance review and ensure that their voice is heard as part of the consideration.
Councillor Tippett Cooper.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Gareth, for talking us through that. That was very clear. I suppose the question I have is, the government seemed pretty hell-bent on trampling these plans through regardless, and I was wondering if, regardless of what recommendation, what outcome we come to as a district council via the means you've set out, can that all just be unpicked by a sort of a government intervention on this, or is that not a risk?
I suppose the answer to that question is yes. The government obviously ultimately could make legislation to prevent the creation of any further parish or town councils. That's clearly within their gift. But personally, I mean, my view on that is I think it would be unlikely.
Councillor Morris.
Can I ask, it's always useful to know when you're making a decision what would happen if you didn't do that, what the alternative is. And would I be right in saying that if we were not to have a town council of Winchester, that all the services listed on page 25 would become the responsibility of a new unitary council of councillors who may be based and live outside Winchester and have very little knowledge of the actual town?
Yes, that's correct. The default position would be that everything would transfer to the new unitary. As far as the, I mean, that would still leave us with the mayoralty and the city status issues to resolve. So we'd probably then be looking at a charter trustee situation, which is another scenario whereby the mayoralty and city status are transferred or basically to a sort of it's kind of a holding arrangement, I suppose, where you establish trustees who become the guardians of the heraldic assets of the city.
To add to that, it would mean that the residents of the city, as opposed to the parish areas, would have no very local representation. They would be at a proper democratic deficit. There would be no absolute local representation in the same way as the parish areas would have.
Councillor Rich. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I made some intemperate comments at full council on the 19th of March, I think it was, about the local government reorganisation. I stand by most of the points, although perhaps I've calmed down a bit now. I guess the point is what we really need to make sure is that the people who happen to live in the town of Winchester, yes, there were some comments that Councillor Horrell make about precisely where that boundary is, and yes, there are issues of cost, which Mr. Davies raised, but I think, am I not right in saying that all we're really doing here is making sure that the people who happen to live in the 5 unparished parts of the city of Winchester get the same representation as everyone else who happens to live in the district? The alternative would be that we end up with a potentially in the maximalist position, which I set out back then in March, that we have a Winchester Town Forum, a new Milton Town Forum, an Aldershot Town Forum, and we have this plurality of committees under this enormous new mid-council authority, whatever form that may take. And all that ends up happening is that people who happen to live within a couple of miles of where we are sat now find that they have no voice at all.
Okay, any further questions? Because we're straying into debate there, Councillor Rich, which is fine. No further questions. So debate. Any debate? Councillor Lurney.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not sure this is really debate as much as covering some of the points that have been made elsewhere. Obviously, the question has been raised about how much residents within Winchester would be likely to be charged by a town council. And that will very much depend on what services that town council is providing. And that is something which needs to be decided through this process. But I think it's worth mentioning that if we leave things as they stand, Winchester will continue to be covered by what's called special expenses. It does not have a precept in the same way that parish council does. It is charged for the services that are delivered similar to a parish council within the unparished area. Currently, precepts, by the way, in the district range from £0 to £232, depending on where you live. So there is a really big variation depending on the services that are provided. It is fairly certain that in the move to a unitary authority, those special expenses are likely to rise. The experience elsewhere of reorganisation is that the new unitary authority takes every opportunity it can, and I know that Mr. Hendy has experience of this, of assigning any expenses it can to a parish. And it is actually possible that special expenses could be applied in areas outside the city too, to any services that are provided within that area that a special expense is levied. So it is very likely that however we go forward, there are a number of things that we currently treat as district expenses, for example, Abbey Gardens, our toilets in the town, which are treated as district expenses, although the town makes a contribution towards those. It is very likely that either way, costs to residents are going to rise. It is also possible that a new unitary will start charging special expenses to parishes as well. So, for example, in Harestock, we have a car park which serves the local area. That is a service which elsewhere is provided by parish councils. So it is perfectly legitimate for the unitary to decide it's going to charge the costs of that car park to residents of Littleton and Harestock Parish Council. This is not going to be something which only affects the costs on the unparished area of Winchester. It will lead to a lot of changes everywhere, but I think that's where that democratic part of it comes in. I think we do need to be in a situation where it is residents of the Winchester unparished area, although I am the person who, although I live in my ward, I actually do live in a parished area in Harestock, so I'm the exception to other people around this table. But I think it's really important that people who are affected by those services are the ones who decide at what level they'll be provided. The other thing I want to mention is around some of the boundaries, and I think lots of us have been driven mad when we've been involved in boundary reviews over the years about the Electoral Commission's very thick pen as it draws on maps, and also by some rather bizarre historic situations which have led, for example, to the St Barnabas boundary running straight through the middle of some houses in Kings Barton. And I think we are in danger if we don't take the opportunity of straightening out some of those parish boundaries as part of this, of never getting the chance to do it again. Certainly those residents of Kings Barton who find themselves in Winchester Town Council, unlike their next door neighbour, are going to get very confused about what's going on. Now it's perfectly possible that they will decide that either they want their own parish or to stay with Headbourne Worthy. but I do still think that we should be looking at straightening out some of those weird anomalies. The other issue we have is that we do have, for example, an extension of the town, which is likely to be agreed in the local plan at Courtney Road, where again, that's currently in Headbourne Worthy Parish Council, but is quite clearly going to be an extension of the town. And I am absolutely positive that the people who live there will be very confused if they get told to go outside the town to vote and find themselves paying for playgrounds in Headbourne Worthy rather than paying for playgrounds that they actually use in the local area. So I think there is a lot to sort out. I think it has been, but I also think there is urgency to this. We know that the timetable for local government reorganisation is very fast, and we also know that a lot of our decision-making powers will disappear before this council does. And I think it's really important that we get some of these things done before we end up running out of time.
Thank you, Councillor Lurney. Any further debate? Councillor Reach.
I think, you know, we've heard a lot from lots of people about this, and we need to just keep stressing this is about making sure that residents' voices are heard here in the town. That has to be absolutely the one priority as far as I'm concerned. It's fiendishly complex. Thank you for taking us through it. You know, petitions to the king and all that sort of nonsense is clearly going to take up a lot of your time, which is better spent doing something else. But I think things like city status and mayoralty are the kind of the sacred or romantic or the loved parts of the city that we do need to retain. We can't do a Rochester. And although, as I said, I made my intemperate comments back in March, perhaps a better Russian would be Kafkaesque is what we find ourselves in the situation. So I just, you know, we've got to plot a way through this, but we've got to keep remembering that kind of lodestar that residents' voices are the most important thing of all.
Councillor Zippin-Cooper.
Yeah, I completely agree with Councillor Reach on that point. The absolute key is to determine what local residents want, and I think that's clear in the presentation. That consultation with local residents will be fundamental to this whole process. If there's a very significant majority of residents that turn around and say we don't want this, then I think that's something we have to listen to. I think the reality is, I'd be very surprised if that is the outcome. I think fundamentally our role as councillors here is that we are all community champions, and the fundamental role of this town forum is that it promotes social value and the social well-being of the city far more effectively than a large unitary authority. I would be really worried if there wasn't a city representative organisation like a town council about what happens to our incredible voluntary sector, for example. That's all the charities that do incredible work in this city are one of the prides of this city, one of the very best parts of it. And the town forum provides a platform to champion them, provides a platform for them to come to and get support from. And it connects the community together. We would definitely lose that if we didn't have a town council. So I personally am strongly supportive of it. The preservation of the mayoralty, 800 years of history, more than 800 years of history, sorry, I forget the actual, 872, I'm looking at the deputy mayor for a number, I won't say 72. It's not just the history that's important to maintain, it's the social value of what the mayor does day in, day out is immeasurable in terms of value. And it's so vital that that's maintained. And it's obvious that a town council would be the best way to tether that to. From my own personal advocacy, I worry about what would happen to the Winchester City of Sanctuary status. Again, a town council provides a very clear body to link that to and to maintain that and to push that forward. As a city in the future, we are going to continue to need to support people who are seeking sanctuary, and a town council will be a perfect vehicle to do that through and maintain our City of Sanctuary status. So all these things make it an absolute no-brainer that a town council is a very good idea. I know we're doing a review. You've clearly understood what my views are. But I think fundamentally a town council is not about bureaucracy. It's not about some of the comments we've heard tonight about criticising the notion of it. It's about decisions, making decisions with local people, for local people, and we'll listen to local people, see what they have to say before we reach a decision. And so I'm really pleased to see this paper, and I really do hope that we end up with a town council, because I could just see the immense benefits it will provide.
Thank you, Councillor Tippett-Cooper. Any further debate? Councillor Buffett.
Thank you, Chair. We heard in the presentation that there are, 44 parish councils in the Winchester district area, and indeed we have representatives from one of them at the meeting today. Clearly there's a need for that type of government and that type of representation in the rest of the district. And this governance review is really asking for that same level of government to be afforded to the residents of Winchester, as that is already given to the rest of the district. This would just prevent an anomaly from occurring as a result of local government reorganisation, in which then the local residents of Winchester would actually then not have what's already available to the vast majority of the rest of the district. So all we're asking is that the Winchester area actually has that same level of local voice and local ability to actually coordinate and to represent the residents of this city. So that really at the basic element is what this call is for, is to have that local representation, just the same as all those other areas of the Winchester district. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any further comments? Councillor Morris.
Yeah, just as broadly, I think as a general sort of democratic principle, we should be in favour of accountability and power being devolved as much as possible, so that people have as much control over their local services as possible on a local level, rather than it being the power being sucked upwards into unitary authority, where you might have people who've never visited Winchester in their lives making decisions over our allotments or our toilets and so on. And the other thing is, I think it's important that the consultation does include even existing parished areas, because I can imagine that if we didn't, that the residents of those areas would very reasonably feel affronted at being left out. I can certainly imagine people on, say, the west side of Andover Road noticing that the people living opposite in Kings Barton are being consulted on and possibly offered the chance of joining a town forum, and they go, oi, oi, what about me? Why haven't we been asked about this? So I think all those areas should be given at least the consultation, and then any options that arise from that consultation should be made as widely as possible to those affected.
Thank you, Councillor Morris. Any further input into debate? So I'll say my piece now. You all make really valid points, but the crux of this for me is what several of you have said, in that we have an unparished area within the current district council, and it's imperative that the people who will not be represented by a parish council come the day of the unitary and local government reorganisation have some local representation. That is the fundamental part that we need to address. I've heard the comments about the land grab and so on. My view there is quite straightforward, in that this city has evolved. Now, we were having a debate earlier today about when the 5 unparished wards boundary was put in place, and we can quite agree on a date. But certainly Bardham Farm, when that was done, was a farm, and Hairstock was a farm. The city has evolved over 50, 80 years, whatever the time frame is, since those boundaries were put in place. So I think it's right and proper that we have constructive discussions and dialogue with those areas that are an urban part of the Winchester city at this stage. And nothing will change unless those people in those areas wish to have a change made, and it's up to the process to enable that discussion to happen, and let people make their decisions, let the parish councils make their decisions. We've got representation here today from the boundary, and I think that needs to be big part of that process. So when Mr. John, you put up that slide that says it's the 5 areas and potentially these other areas, that is not for me to decide. That is for the working group under licensing regulation, and we've got the chair of licensing regulation sitting at the back listening to all this. That is for that group to decide. But my view is that that is a valid conversation because the shape of this city has changed immeasurably over the last 50 plus years. Urgency, it was brought up. There is an urgency. We can't get to a point where this process runs out of runway. I'm looking at the chair of the Licensing and Regulation Committee saying that this has to be delivered. It can't slip. The Winchester Town Forum, the members sitting here today have requested this, and we need to be kept close to this process because we are representing those 5 areas that currently will have no representation at all, local level, come local government reorganisation. So we need to be very much involved and understanding what's going on. Thank you all for your comments today. Hopefully, Councillor Lomy will take this back into his meeting next week. I've already spoken to the parish councillors who come along today, and I would hope that we can have proper discussions about this. This is not this group trying to grab other areas. It's this group ensure that the people are represented who won't be represented at a local level, and ensure that the model that goes forwards represents the Winchester as a city and as the best for the city for all the good reasons that Councillor Tibbet Cooper elaborated in his words. So moving on, the recommendation that we have before us in the paper is that we note the contents of this report, specifically the agreement to undertake the requested community governance review for central Winchester area, to note the governance arrangements established for the initial stages of the review, including the role of licensing and regulation committee, and the formation of a members task and finish group incorporating town forum representation, and to receive the presentation slides attached to Appendix 1, which provide an initial briefing on the community governance review process. And thank you for that, Mr. John, for doing that today. So are those recommendations agreed? Thank you. Moving on the agenda to item 9, the informal group verbal updates. As this is the beginning of a new municipal year and the informal groups have changed chair and members, I propose not to proceed with any verbal updates in the informal groups at this meeting, but I would expect those to return from those informal groups at our next meeting in September. Thank you. And moving on to our final item, item 10, Town Forum Group Appointments and Work Programme for 2025-26. So the report sets out an initial draft work programme for the new municipal year, and it asks the Forum to agree matters it wishes to consider in 2025-26. The Forum is also asked to consider its appointments to the informal groups established during the previous municipal years. So there's the work programme and the appointments into the forums. So the work programme is documented in Appendix 2, and the work programme will have additional items added as agreed between myself as the chair and Mr. Hendy as strategic director as appropriate to issues as they develop during the year. And that will be covered in the recommendations. The paper before you contains the list of informal groups and members of those groups for next year. And I propose that we keep those and retain those groups into the next financial year, so those 5. I'm also proposing that we create a 6th informal group, and that is to cover community governance review. And I'll cover that in a moment when we go through the names in the groups. So carry forward the 5 informal groups and create a 6th informal group specifically for the activity that we just discussed. So I circulated the proposed members for the informal groups to you all earlier today and to Democratic Services. And so for the purposes of the recording for this meeting, I am going to quickly run through the names on those groups because they're not actually in the papers. So the accounts informal group will be Councillors Batho, Lerney and Morris, with Councillor Lerney as chair. The culture informal group will be Councillors Eve, Morris, Thompson and Tippett Cooper, with Councillor Tippett Cooper as chair. The climate and open spaces will be Councillors Batho, Murphy, Eve and Lerney, with Councillor Eve as chair. The grants and community empowerment informal group will be Councillor Aaron, Batho, Becker, Eve and Wise, with Councillor Aaron as chair. And the streets and spaces informal group will be Councillors Aaron, Batho, Eve, Murphy, Thompson, Westwood and Todd. Good luck chairing that one, Councillor Murphy. And the Community Governance Review Group, the new group, I will circulate a request for volunteers to be on that group during the next week and open that up for people to volunteer to be in that group. So I think, unless are there any questions on what I said at that point? Any debate on that? So go straight to the recommendations that this forum considers the items listed in Appendix 1 and 2 of the report and agrees matters it wishes to consider during the 2025-26 municipal year and delegates to the strategic director, in consultation with the chairperson, authority to set the detailed work programme. Secondly, that the forum considers whether it wishes to reappoint the informal groups as shown in paragraph 11.2 and establish any additional informal groups, which I've just outlined. And thirdly, that the forum agrees that the membership of the informal groups for 2025-26 established as part of item 2 above. So are those recommendations agreed? Great. Okay, so thank you very much. And I think that concludes this evening meeting, and thank you. Can we stop the recording now? Thank you.